This podcast is brought to you by Gundealio, gundealio.com, and the smartphone app Gundealio. Download the smartphone app, free for your phone. You'll get notifications about deals on guns, ammo, and then also podcast stuff, video stuff. So a lot of good content there, but also deals to be had. And also we can send you messages when you walk into a gun store, give you a heads up about new products or deals going on. And then gundealio.com, it's kind of the sister site for it. And another place where you can find ammo in stock and deals galore. So check that out.
Welcome into Gun Talk Hunt. It's a new year, and obviously that means new gear. And this leads into our conversation today, and today I'm joined by Jess Treglia of Savage Arms. And the reason why we're talking to Savage Arms is because they introduced something that is a topic of today, which is straight pull rifles. Jess, how you doing today?
Good. And how about yourself?
Well, I'm doing great. It's a new year. 2020 just continues to roll on, but you know what? What I love seeing out of our industry, and it's the firearms industry, and what's really big is innovation. I think a lot of people anticipated with the March slowdown when, all this crazy COVID stuff hit, is that they kind of just thought, okay, companies are going to hunker down, they're not going to innovate, and they're just going to start pumping out product. That's not the case with this Savage Impulse straight pull rifle that you guys introduced.
Correct. It's really not the case with us at all. And us, I'm sure, like many others, had to have that internal conversation of, do we continue to launch new products when the market can't even get what it wants, and we can't fulfill the current demand? We're working as hard as we can, more than doubling capacity, trying to bring staff in a time when it's really hard to get employees to come in, and trying to level load shifts in order that, you don't have as many people out on the floor and as close together to kind of protect the employees, but also fulfill an increasing market, one that, we've never seen before. Use that word, right. Unprecedented. But we knew we were just about ready to launch this new product, the Impulse, along with many others. So even throughout 2020, we did release a few line extensions here and there, and did fit them into our production capacity, knowing that we had planned them in advance. We were ready to go, working with suppliers and having components ready and machining ready. So we worked around that and made sure we accounted for it while still working with our customers to get as much product out the door as we could for existing products in demand. And so we continued to move forward with Impulse, and it actually allowed us to kind of be quiet about it for a little while. And, it's exciting, right? Because like you said, is everyone else hunkering down? But we've got something new and exciting. It doesn't affect the rest of our capacity. So it gives us something fun to do, and it gave us something to look forward to as well during 2020.
And that's one of the big things. And why is a straight pull rifle so big? Well, one, the Impulse is American made. It's fully American made. The last, and we were talking about this briefly beforehand, the last American made straight pull rifle is the POF USA Revolt. And that was launched in 2014. They're still producing it. You can probably, I doubt you can find it out there, but if you do, it's going to cost you around $3,000. It's pretty pricey. There's the Blaser R8. Everybody's very familiar with that. I was looking at one yesterday, and it was around in the 3,600 category. What I thought was cool, one, Savage Arms released the Impulse, an American-made straight pull rifle. Like, the starting around MSRP, and that's just MSRP, so that you might be able to find it for less than that. What, $1,379? I mean,
correct. Yep.
$1,300 for a straight pull rifle. And I'm going to tell you my initial impressions on this as we go throughout this interview. But first, let's get to know Jess a little bit. Where did you come from? Because you're a shooter, and I mean, you're a hunter. You're out there doing it. This is everyday stuff for you, right?
Correct. I've been in the firearms industry for about 12 years. So before I even graduated from college, I was already working at Colt, actually.
Okay.
So, you've got Gun Valley here in the Northeast, and it's kind of easy to make the right connections. And about 7 years ago, I switched over to Savage, and quickly kind of took on a lot of roles and responsibilities within sales and marketing. And about 3-4 years ago, took on our product development here.
Right.
at Savage and brought some ideas to the table. And Impulse is one that we started just over 2 years ago. So it was nice to be able to get to see a large platform from ideation, like starting in my own brain with the rest of our team and our president thinking this is something we really should do, and then to bring it fully to market. In like defense and aerospace, sometimes you might work on something for like 40 years,
Oh my
right?
gosh. Yeah, right. That's
Better
right.
hope it works out. Right? At least we get, 2 years and it goes by like that. It honestly
Right.
feels like we started this 6 months ago, but
That's
and then you get to kind of keep that whole plan going with other products as well.
Man, you got to have it. I just think about this. So you guys, what is it? 2 years you've worked on this,
Hmm.
and you've kept it quiet. Like I would have I'd be horrible. I'd be awful. Don't tell me, Jess, if you've got a launch coming down the pipe in 2 years, don't tell me about it, because I would have a hard time keeping this a secret, because I get excited about this stuff, and I didn't make this widely known, but I ran this over like immediately when I got it. I just thought it was too cool. I wasn't going to blast it out to the masses, but I sure as heck was going to run over and show my neighbor who's just ate up with hunting rifles. And I said, hey, you're not going to believe this. He picks it up and he's like, but this is a straight pull. He almost didn't know how to run the action.
Yeah. So it is really hard to keep that a secret. I can tell you that there's definitely an alert on my calendar for the last 2 months every morning to Google it to make sure that it's not out there. Nobody's released it yet. I actually even have relatives in the industry. So, holiday discussions, you can't talk about anything. You just sit there and stare at each other.
So what you doing?
So, exactly. So it is hard, and you've got to tell your partners ahead of time, and you want to be able to kind of get with media partners too. And we work with a lot of industry professionals, professional shooters, team Savage shooters, before we even come out with products to make sure that we have the right specs, the right features, the right market, the right ideas, and really listen to what they have to say. So, 2 years ago, we did talk to a panel of experts, and it doesn't get out there. It's really hard. It's honestly hard even on myself to not tell everyone about it, because it is so exciting.
Yeah.
But it does feel like straight pulls are they're not unknown in the U.S. They're just not popular. I don't think that people really even think of them when they walk into a store to purchase a conventional bolt action rifle. It doesn't even come to mind. And especially once they're there looking at the shelf, there's, 1,000 other options for them that if they even thought about a straight pull, they've kind of moved on when they've walked in there.
Right.
But the actual concept of just a 2-motion bolt as opposed to the 4 motions, when you look at it, it just makes so much sense.
Yes.
But it's just so rare to find.
And let's clarify this. Let's talk about the differences between a straight pull rifle as opposed to like a traditional bolt, which it's 4 movements, whereas this, man, it's forward and back, or back and then forward. I mean, it's very intuitive is what I would say. And so I'm sorry, you know what, if you're listening to this across our podcast channels, we really appreciate you. We love you. But you are not getting to see the eye candy that is on the desk, which is the Savage Impulse straight pull rifle. So it's on the desk in front of me, and I'm just looking at it going, it's so easy to run. I don't know why everyone doesn't make one.
Correct. Yeah. So instead of that up, back, forward, down motion of a conventional bolt action, you have just the straight pull back, straight push forward. The Savage Impulse, right? You think impulse, it's your reaction, it's your instinct, like you said, just forward and back.
Right.
But with this too, we actually have in Impulse a rotary bolt. So you even aid in pre-extraction. So you do feel the bolt opening, and that's releasing hex lock, and then you're going to get pre-extraction aiding with that. So you really don't have any resistance in opening that bolt either.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to use as well. It's a lot faster. You're not fumbling around. I personally actually tend to do fumble with hunting rifles and hunting scenarios. I've had that situation where, I eject a spent round and it bounces back in the chamber, and now I'm concerned and panicking, trying to make sure, that deer dropped and it
Oh yeah.
didn't take 5 steps or even disappear. You always want to get that first shot. You only have one first shot,
Right. That's
and you want to make
exactly
sure
right.
you get it. But you also want to keep an eye on them to make sure that if you
Hmm.
do need to fire a second round, you're quickly right there on target, and it's not a very difficult situation. And I've struggled, right? You
Yeah.
try to throw your bolt open quickly, and now it's sideways, it's over here. You've completely lost sight of that deer, that animal in your scope, and then you're trying to struggle by zooming out, zooming back in, trying to find it. With a straight pull, you don't have to remove your cheek weld, so
Hmm.
your cheek can stay right on the comb piece, and you just pull back and push forward to reload. So your rifle's not going up, it's not lifting the bolt handle up.
Right.
It's not pointing it to the left because you're not throwing it, up and forward. And so it really stays on target, which as I got to shoot this, as we started to get, pre-production models and marketing samples, it just made so much more sense that I'm not even sure when I'll go back to my traditional bolt action rifle now.
Oh no. Well, I mean, that's okay because you've got 3 different model variants in the Impulse. So if you're a big game guy, they've got a line for that. If you're a hog hunter, they've got a line for that. If you're a predator guy, they've got a line for that. So and I think there's little differences between all of those, but I think our audience, because you haven't heard a lot about straight pull rifles, because many of them originate over in the European countries, because a lot of their hunts are driven hunts, and they are not allowed to have semi-auto rifles or auto-loading rifles. And so they've got to figure out what's the most efficient way to be quick on follow-up shots. And that's where the whole straight pull concept comes into play, is because it is quicker, because it's 2 motions. And yes, you can become very proficient. And I know there's a lot of traditional bolt guys out there. I'm one of them. That's what I'm used to. Um, but it is quicker once you get to run one, and once you get to run one, honestly, that is smooth as this. When I first got the Impulse, the hex lock, it was smooth, but man, every time you run it, it seems to loosen up and feel good, feel right, and it's just so smooth, and it's quick.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to experience a driven hunt in Europe about 4 or 5 years ago, and I get to go there often to do that. And it's a completely different experience from hunting here in North America. And I had a conventional bolt action rifle. You
Right.
get to see other hunters in the woods, and you see their follow up shots are a heck of a lot faster. And you don't think of that until you're out there and those animals are running at full speed, and there's a
Yes.
lot of them. And you know that you really do need to clear the land, and you need to get that wild boar out of there. And taking a second shot, at least for me, it's a struggle,
Yes.
and you need more than two. So it was kind of eye opening. And with Impulse, we wanted to really pull in the best of a variety of worlds. We want to look at traditional bolt action rifles and say, what really works on these as far as reliability, accuracy, and then with AccuFit and AccuStock and AccuTrigger technologies, sort of making it custom to the shooter and making it comfortable. But then when you look at standard MSRs, so a semi-automatic AR platform, what works with that? Well, it's speed as well as modularity.
Yep.
And then you have straight pull rifles, which, like you said, have been around since the 1800s, primarily manufactured in Europe by Europeans, and they are expensive to make. And what works with that? Well, you get the speed, kind of a nice in between an AR as well as a bolt action rifle, but they're expensive. They're hard to find, and you don't get to really handle the same pressures that you get in a bolt action rifle, and necessarily not always the same accuracy. So we really worked hard to pull in the best of all these worlds, and hex lock, being that ball bearing lockup, is a proven lockup mechanism in the straight pull world that we said that's what we want to use. It's strong, it's reliable. Let's take that, and how can we improve upon that? And that's where we kind of started with Impulse. So we really wanted to pull in all those best of both worlds. When you look at it, it does sort of look like a traditional bolt action rifle,
It does.
which kind of it lets you kind of be familiar with it. But then it's extremely modular as well as fast, which is where you kind of pull in that AR world too.
Well, and one thing that Savage is known for is when you guys came out with the AccuFit stock or the AccuStock with the AccuFit technology, this is an adjustable rifle for for youth. That's when I first got it. So I'm sitting there in my garage, and my boy is playing out front with his friends, his neighborhood friends, and so that gives me a great opportunity to bring them over and give them a little gun safety. It's sitting in a vise, and I say, guys, do you know what this is? Oh yeah, yeah. And a few of the kids pop up and they say it's a deer hunting gun. And I go, yes, it can be, absolutely. I go, but can anybody tell me what kind of action it has? Well, it's a bolt action, right? But what kind? And they just paused, and as I kind of expect them to, I was like, well, this is going to be the first bolt. I guarantee you it's the first straight action these kids have ever seen, or straight pull action. And I said, it's a straight pull. And I said, I'm going to show you how to run it. And they go, no way. I go, yes. I was like, okay, line up. And so I had 5 kids giving them a little gun safety. I said, okay, hey, first, every one of you that touches this gun, we're going to make sure it is clear, pointed in a safe direction, and I'm going to say, I'm going to teach you how to run it. And so the first kid gets up and he goes, well, this is wrong. I go, what do you mean it's wrong? He goes, it's on the, I'm left-handed. And I go, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I sat there, and one of the coolest things Savage did with this impulse was they made the bolt handle where you can switch it. And so I switched it in a matter of 30 seconds, and this kid goes, this might be the coolest gun I've ever seen. It actually fits me. And so it was just a great learning lesson, one for the kids. And with the Aics stock, I told them, I was like, look, if you're a shorter kid, if you're a smaller kid, we can adjust all this for you on this gun. And they were just blown away. It was one of the best hour and a half of my whole weekend, just showing these kids this rifle.
It is interesting, and I actually use our shortest length of pull, which is considered youth, because I'm a smaller framed individual. So when we introduced that in 2018 in AccuFit, it was heaven for me because I can finally fit in every rifle we make. So like you said, for kids, you can adjust it down and you can raise the cheek riser up because women naturally have longer necks. So we do need a higher cheek riser in order to see through the scope. But the bolt handle is interesting because when we first had the whole scope and product definition to start this product, we clearly state, must be capable of being left hand because God forbid Savage doesn't introduce a left-hand rifle, we just get destroyed because people just expect it from us now.
That's right.
And the engineer came to me probably only a few months in, 2 or 3 months in, and said, I can make it ambidextrous. And I was like, yeah, I know we need right and left hand. And he goes, no, ambidextrous in one gun. And I was like, well, then what are you asking me for?
Just do it.
Go do it. Yeah. And so he did, and it was really awesome technology. And, early on like that, we knew, yeah, why not? But as we got closer to launch in the last 6 months or so, and it really got it in the hands of professional shooters as well as media personnel and staff, is when we really determined that the multi-positional ambidextrous handle was extremely cool.
Yes.
And probably one of the most valuable patents that we do have on that. And not just because of the left-hand, right-hand interchangeability, also because it's toolless and you can quickly do it in the field,
yes,
but also the multi-positions. So the bolt handle itself can also be inserted at 4 different angles on either side of the gun. And when we had a group of 8 or 10 people a couple of weeks ago, everyone put it in a different position.
Oh, wow.
Whereas with a regular bolt action rifle, that's what it is,
yep,
right? No one ever gives you the option to change that. And you can buy aftermarket bolt handles or knobs and change it up. But in this case, it was interesting to see that everyone was actually more comfortable with something than what they had been given.
Right.
Up until this point. And so that's cool to see. You can put it in the position that's most comfortable for you. And the bolt knob itself is removable. It's threaded on a standard thread. So aftermarket knobs, if you want to change that up, is something that you can do. And that goes back to the modularity of it and kind of just thinking about every single detail that went into this rifle.
Right. And one thing that I actually really enjoy that you guys did with the 6.5 Creedmoor on the Predator model is that it accepts Aics Magazines. And I thought that was one of the biggest things for me is when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, now I can use all my AI mags for this gun. It's like a perfect little crossover for my I'm being selfish is all this comes to. Is I just
and
love
it gives you a little bit higher round count, higher magazine capacity, as well as you've got the ambidextrous bolt or magazine release there too that you can use, and it's a little bit easier to use to switch out mags. So it is a cool feature if you want a higher round count, really.
And especially in the Predator model, and I highly encourage people to look at this, because what I see in this gun is the higher round count. Because honestly, coyotes move, and when you're predator hunting, you might have to shoot at a moving target. And trust me when I say this, that I miss often when I'm hunting coyotes, and having multiple shots in the magazine is very helpful.
And honestly, listen, none of us like reloading magazines. It's not fun.
No.
Most people think, my job, they think I just get to shoot and play with guns all day. It's not reality.
Oh, come on.
Most of the time,
Yes,
I'm just the, magazine loader in the background, making sure someone at the bench gets to keep shooting. And trust me, more rounds per magazine is a lot easier to load than multiple magazines.
Completely agree. And one thing that needs to be said on this is that the Predator, the line, the Impulse line, has threaded barrels.
Yes, all of them.
So all of them have threaded barrels, which I see a lot of modern usage in these guns, because it's just a big thing. You've got to have a threaded barrel now on everything. Like it's going to become standard practice.
Yeah, and especially it kind of stems, I don't want to say it stems from, but at least in Europe, if the barrel's not threaded, it just doesn't make sense, because they are capable of using suppressors. They're not as heavily regulated as they are here. But for predator hunting, hog hunting, it is very common. And just in general, muzzle brakes. I mean, why have that recoil impulse if you don't have to? So we didn't put muzzle brakes on them right out of the factory, and primarily because everyone has their own personal preference. Everyone's going to want something different. So instead, we made sure that they were threaded, and they were threaded as standard threads, so that aftermarket options were capable for the customers.
Okay, we've got just a little bit more time left, but I want to ask Jess some questions. Favorite type of game to hunt? I'm totally putting her on the spot right now. She has no time to think about all these questions, so I'm just gonna go ahead and throw her under the bus right now.
So for me, it's actually turkey hunting.
What?
Yeah, I know, and totally off-brand for this conversation. I'm aware.
Actually, it's not, because I've got a little Savage 410 that I just got last year, and with Savage Stevens, which I didn't get to use last year. So, what's your favorite caliber to hunt, or favorite shotgun shell to hunt them with?
I still use 12 gauge, although I will say the 410 market has just taken off, and it just looking at the science behind it, and having our 301 single shot and the technology that Federal has put into their 410 ammunition, the TSS loads, it just makes sense. You can take down turkeys at distances you never thought possible before. And the only reason I like turkey hunting is it's what I started learning with, and I've only been hunting for about 10 years of my life. But I'd like the interaction, having to call in the toms and really interact with them, and it's more of a hunt, or
it's a more active. It's more active.
It is, and it's pumps the adrenaline, but I think it's more history for me, and that's what I learned, and it's fun up here in the Northeast.
It's funny how
but that's hard.
It's hard. It's funny how we all go back to our roots at some point when, and I encourage people, go back to your roots often, because that's where you learn your skills. And I do have to ask, have you ever elk hunted?
Ironically, no, and I know that it is turkey hunting on steroids.
Yes.
And so I have, not without trying. Let's just say that.
Well,
yeah.
And that's fair, but I mean, oh my gosh, if you're a turkey hunter and elk hunting is not on your list of things to do, you're wrong. I mean, you've got to get out there and do it.
Maybe we'll touch base January 2022, and I'll try to now sneak in a fall elk hunt
Yes.
with the big game.
I
The
would
impulse big
love
game.
that. That would be amazing. I'm going to go ahead and mark that down. Yeah.
12-month recap. Did
Yes.
Jess go elk hunting?
Yes. I will. We will relaunch this podcast out there with a follow-up on our success.
Perfect.
But if you've been living under a rock and you have not heard about the Savage Impulse, I will tell you this much. It is innovative. It is slick. It's got all the features you want. It's got the feel you need in any given platform. Whether you're a big game hunter, you're a hog hunter, or you want to go after some predators, this is a viable option for you to enter a market that has been unreachable for those of us that have tight pocketbooks. I highly recommend it, and I just cannot wait to get this gun in the field. It's very tired of sitting in front of me. It needs to be shouldered. But Jess, I can't thank you enough for joining us on Gun Talk Hunt. Do you have any parting advice for our listeners, whether it be hunting or product-wise?
Product-wise, at least for the impulse, get out there and feel it. Operate the bolt, shoulder it, understand the technology behind it. You can go to our website, savagearms.com, and look at the product videos, the how-tos. But really, you got to get out there and feel it and try it out, test it, go to a store, shoulder it. Because once you feel it and operate it and use it, that's where you realize the true benefit of this rifle or any rifle in general.
Yes, and just note that if you go into a gun shop, and I highly recommend you do so, Jess is right, and you run this Savage Impulse, don't start by pressing up. Just rock it back and slam it forward, and you're good to go. It is that easy. Jess Treglia, Savage Arms, thank you so much for joining us on Gun Talk Hunt. As always, folks, get out there, be safe, and hunt hard.